Hey guys, Shadowrek here with a quick video discussing Netherprism and antenna for keys. Um, Mostly as Dinars have just come out, which I will be making a Dinar video very shortly around the same time as this video, so you can watch out for that if you're looking for that as well. But the reason I'm discussing antenna and prism is because these are by far and away the most ran trinkets in every single key. However, I don't think that means that it's the right choice. So, the first thing is anytime the top log of anything starts running something, people will start trying to emulate it. And with Nether Prism, it used to be bugged in two different ways. One, the damage that it deals used to not split. Now, in regards to that, I can, pull up a log and show the damage that it does. Now, Nether Prism, before that fix in a key like Arakara, was usually closer to 2.5 to 3% damage. An extra 1.5% damage on a Trinket is insane. The second bug that was fixed was you used to be able to pre-stack Prism and go into a key with 18 stacks, so you had an 18-stack Prism on your first pull. That's since been fixed, and you can no longer do that. However, by the time these two bugs had been fixed, Nether Prism had already been hard cemented as the number one choice, and I don't think it'll exactly change quickly. The upside to Nether Prism is, for the most part, the fact that you can put damage into larger pulls or more dangerous pulls that you may not otherwise be able to do with your group without utilizing Nether Prism. However, this is something that is typically done by very high-end organized groups. This is not something the average pug will ever be making use of, and it's really just something that is bad to copy, especially if you're just, pugging like title level keys, doing like not in voice keys, don't even know the route that you're necessarily doing. That's not a case that I think you should be running Nether Prism in. It's not just outright better, and Havoc is simply not a burst spec. You can make use of Nether Prism by holding multiple Reaver's Glaives to use them back to back in the window, but that doesn't make it the best thing that you can run on Havoc. Now, the reasoning for that is you need to keep in mind this is a trinket that only has the proc damage effect and the on use. It has no base stats. And if you look at how much agility we have versus how much agility a trinket can give, you can see on the maxed Astral antenna here, it's 8,400, and agility is 105k. With weapon DPS included, this is going to be closer to like 140,000 attack power, give or take, and that means that the base stat on the trinket is worth about 5.5 to 6% damage. Nether Prism just doesn't have that. And in turn, it has this tiny damage proc for 1.18%. So, being pretty fair with it, let's say that you do about 4.5% less DPS outside of when you use Nether Prism. But in turn, how much do you gain? So that's going to depend. The thing is, that just means if you use Nether Prism on larger pulls, you're going to do significantly more in those pulls. And I'm going to be able to see windows where Nether Prism was pressed. If I click here, we'll see Nether Prism was pressed here due to the amount of damage that's being done in this window. And with an 18-stack Nether Prism, you are looking at something in the range of, let me double check the number here, but it's 3934 agility times 18, about 70,000 agility. Again, assuming that with attack power you're going to be around 140,000, that's about a 50% damage increase for 20 seconds. But that's every 3 minutes. So the way that it works out is, unless you're properly utilizing burst damage, you're actually getting less stats than you would using basically any other trinket. So Nether Prism usage needs to actually be used well for it to be a positive benefit. Otherwise, you're going to be losing damage by equipping this trinket. So, if you don't confidently know that you should be running Nether Prism or know how to use it, I simply think you should not be using it. And even for me, in my keys, there are a lot of keys where I don't feel like I should be running Nether Prism. We haven't solidified our routes enough, and we don't pull around it in any way. This may change in the future for me, but as it is, our Death Knight currently doesn't have Netherprism, so we haven't been playing around it. And that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at what the top players are running, because I feel like Netherprism is something that people see other classes run it, they do better burst and Havoc. And this has been getting ran since way before, when it was massively bugged and insanely far ahead. But with both those bugs being fixed, it's slightly ahead at best, and when it's not used well, it is worse. Keep in mind as well, with that, if you die, you lose all the stacks of this trinket. It's already very punishing to die on Eldrazi Reaver, making it double punishing, while not making use of the positives of the trinket is just another thing to consider. The alternative is obviously Cursed Stone Idol, and we do have high runs of Cursed Stone Idol. Cursed Stone Idol itself does really good damage, and it gives you a large critical strike window. In turn, it does cost a GCD. So you can see here, Cursed Stone Idol is doing more damage than the effect of the Nether Prism. It also has the 8400 agility, which is greater than what you get in 20 seconds of the 20 seconds of building up stacks for Nether Prism. So you actually get about 7,800 agility per 20 seconds, which is how long it lasts. Which means that on average, the amount of stats that this gives you is less than the base stat on a trinket that has agility. Obviously, because it's being put into burst windows and you save Reaver's Glaives around it, it works out to perform better, but just as a comparison, that if you're using this poorly, or in cases where I've had people ask if they could just bind it to I-Beam so it goes off every time they I-Beam, no, that's worse than just having a trinket equipped that has the base agility on it. So, the damage from Cursed Stone Idol beats that out, and it also gives you that massive 1100 crit for 15 seconds every minute and a half. You just press Stone Idol on cooldown, and you get that massive amount of critical strike. Even in single target, it's about 9,000, which is close to about 12% crit. Pretty high value. It's not nearly as big of a burst window as the burst window on Nether Prism, but I believe Cursed Stone Idol is going to serve you better in any pugging experience, because you're just pressing this on cooldown for the damage it deals, plus a bit of a buff window to fit a couple of Reaver Glaives in. So that's my opinion on Nether Prism. It's perfectly able to be run, but if you don't know that you should be running it or how to run it, I don't believe that you should be playing Nether Prism. And I think the main reason that you see everybody running it now is just because everyone has been running it before them. That said, I will be running Nether Prism for the next little bit in my keys. I did not get a Stone Idol so far in this tier, and I didn't get the Mythic Boots from Raid either. But since I have a Mythic Nether Prism, I bought the Mythic Boots instead of buying a Mythic Stone Idol, because it's just a better upgrade overall, both for Raid and M+ at that point. So I bought that, and unless I get lucky out of Vault, I won't have a Stone Idol for 3 more weeks. So in the meantime, you're going to see me playing Nether Prism due to that 13 item level gap. That being said, when it comes to all trinkets right now, if you're going up a whole tier of item level, like 730 Mythic track trinkets versus 717s, I'd pretty much always recommend run the 730. Even if you don't run it on use, run double passives, go for the Myth track. Anytime you're looking at whether or not you should run another trinket, if it's on a higher track, just run the higher track, because none of the trinkets are that powerful right now. Next, this goes into Antenna. Now, Antenna is a large critical strike window. It's about 5,900 crit at 730, which is, give or take, it's about 8% critical strike. And with that, you do get multiple stacks that can overlap. But the uptime on this is actually pretty low over a given key. So I could pull it up in this one. Usually, so it's this buff down here. It's at 31% uptime. And there's a couple times where it goes up to multiple stacks. But on average, you're not going higher than 1 stack very often, and it's very briefly for 2 stacks here and there. We can pretty much confidently average this out to say about, it's less than 40% uptime on that. let's say 38%, which I think is being a little nice with the numbers. And that averages out to about 2200 critical strike, which is like 2.5% with DR. That's best case scenario. This is equal to less than a 2% damage gain. And what I consider for Antenna to be bad is that because it is not far ahead, and keep in mind, it used to be really far ahead in Sims, but Sims got fixed due to a bug. As far as I understand, the bug in them was when you got a second stack, it would refresh the timer of the first stack as well, which is not how it works in game. If you pick up a second stack, your first stack still falls off at 10 seconds, then the second one is up for 10 seconds. In Sims, it was refreshing, and you'd have both stacks for 10 seconds, and if you got a third stack, it would refresh and keep all three. When that was fixed, it lost nearly 1% DPS. It was a massive, massive downswing in the sim numbers. So, now Antenna Sims like 0.1 to 0.2% ahead if you put a reasonable miss rate on it, like 10%. So it's slightly better, but in turn, you're playing a mini game where you're thinking about Antenna, you're thinking about when to hold the orbs or pick them up. You might actually leave range of mobs or mess up a global due to the way that you're moving around trying to pick up orbs. There's also times where you may get yourself killed to a mechanic, or you're just focusing on the wrong thing and don't notice cast going off on you or something like that where you could defensive. For 0.2% damage on a good day, I don't think that's worth it. Simply, when it comes down to it, I think you're better off running pretty much any other trinket and just not having that mini game to deal with or think about in your keys. This is mostly for push keys, obviously in like a weekly key or farm content and raid. That's perfectly fine, but when it comes down to it on progression, whether it's a keystone or a raid, the last thing you need is to be adding more mechanics for yourself and more mental load. So if we're talking 0.2% DPS, which is basically never going to make or break a key, however, a death can, and miss globals is worth even more damage than what you're going to gain by using this. At that point, just take off the trinket and use something that you don't even have to think about. There's many trinkets that fall into that category. Personally, I typically run Sigil of the Cosmic Hunt because I have it on Myth Track and I have it with speed, but there are many other options. You can also use Solea's Secret Technique, which is pretty good, and again, you can look at the stat value on it. The math that I came out to, assuming the about 38% uptime, which was being, again, pretty friendly, 2274 crit, whereas a Solea's, where you don't have to think about it at all, is 1836 on you and 305 on a teammate, equal to about 2141. So very, very slightly worse. There's also Pacemaker is not the best option, but it's a pretty good option still from Floodgate. There's a Nubicage Crystal from Dawnbreaker, and there is Sack Brood from Arakara. All of these trinkets are incredibly close in value, and you can simply just use any of them. So, any of those trinkets, I think, are free to use. I stick to using Sigil of the Cosmic Hunt for now, because it always does proc on the target that you're targeting, so it's also some extra prio damage compared to other trinkets that will be maybe a little bit more AoE, but in overall value, there's not going to be anything that's too far ahead. I might toy around with other trinkets here and there, but I truly don't believe that any of them matter that much. Don't stress over, oh, which one's the best. They're all like within 0.2% damage to each other, and that's just a number that does not really matter at that point. All the trinkets are incredibly close together. They all have RNG to them, and they'll be different dungeon to dungeon. So, for the most part, that's what I wanted to talk about. So when it comes down to me making recommendations soon on what to spend your dinars on, don't be surprised when I say that I don't actually recommend that you just get Astral Antenna and Netherprism and call it a day, like you might believe if you were to go look at the top logs. I do think that Stone Idol is likely better for most players instead of running Netherprism, especially in pugging scenarios. I just recommend running Stone Idol. As for Astral Antenna, if you like playing with it, you could absolutely play with it, but If you don't like playing with it, or you just don't want to deal with that extra mental load of an extra mechanic, play anything else. Again, Pacemaker, Sigil of the Cosmic Hunt, Soleil's Secret Technique, Empowering Crystal of Anubikaj. Those are all perfectly fine replacements. Any of them will do. So, that's everything for this video. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see me live, you can catch me at twitch.tv/Shotterek, and if you'd like to keep up with Havoc Demon Hunter or World of Warcraft in general, I'd appreciate a follow on my channel. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye for now.